And you're just in time for yet another edition of Siasa Brigade, your go-to show on matters politics of this country and governance at large. We're not just talking matters Kenya, but also across the borders. I'm yours truly, Richard Mwanjun. Always a pleasure to have you on board. Now today on the show, we are talking about matters post-election revelations and how that informs the politics of the day. With me to delve into this subject is Kenya's most sought-after political analyst and renowned public scholar in East Africa. The first of his name, Herman Manyora. Great to see you, sir.
Yes.
How are you?
Wonderful.
Black leather jacket.
Yes, yes.
Very chilly Friday.
It's chilly.
All right.
Yes.
Let's see how the weather, fares on for us.
Yes.
Let's talk matters post-election revelations that have been brought on board, most of those touching on the presidential elections. And let's start from Azimio, presidential election chief agent, Saitabao Ole Kanchori's revelations, considering how Raila Odinga won the elections, but power is not given, it is taken. And he says William Ruto took power, much as the people's will was to have Raila as the president of Kenya. Let's start from a general perspective, sir. You have analyzed politics for so long. At what point did we get whereby, as much as people go vote and make their will known to the people, it is compromised that someone else takes power and not the outright winner?
I think we've never had anything else other than that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've never had a situation except for 2002 when, well, let's say when the elections were highly contested. And I think in Kenya, we are looking at 2007, 2013, 2017, and 2022. In those elections, the winner has always been shortchanged.
The rule of the jungle.
It has always been difficult for the transfer of power. And you must understand in the context of really, not just Kenya, many democracies, many struggling democracies especially, sometimes it's never a question of the voting. That's why observer missions are correct in their observation that the elections were free and fair.
Fair, credible.
Including somebody saying it was the best ever election. She's not wrong. What they may not know is that it's not about the process of voting itself.
What is it about?
It's at the point at which the winner must be given that is not given. It began in 2007 in a very crude way, where the winner is there, the trophy is on the table, the team captain is walking towards the venue, the medals are ready.
Someone else is crowned.
Somebody else grabs the thing and runs away with it, and is sworn into office at night, and that's the end of the story, and the rest we don't want to remember. Other years it has been a little subtle. Because we were experimenting with technology, we forgot that somebody can tamper with the transmission of the results.
Digital footprint.
Yeah, so that pop, and we saw it. It was very clear in 2013 in the Supreme Court, very clear in 2017 in the Supreme Court. It was about tampering with technology. In 2017, the Supreme Court has pronounced, 2022, the Supreme Court has pronounced itself. We may not want to contradict the Supreme Court, but it's still obvious that a lot of gerrymandering with technology could have taken place. So really at the end of the day, it's not that the people of Kenya do not vote peacefully in a free and fair process, devoid of violence, all those ugly things that go to compromise an election. We are past those things in Kenya. It is at the tip, when power must move from A to B, that all sorts of games must be played and B does not get.
Very well.
Yes.
But at that tail end that you're talking about, to finally hand over the power to the next person, incoming person, that mandate squarely lies on the hands of the IEBC chairperson, or rather the chairman of the Electoral Commission of that time. Isaac Hassan, the chairman of the predecessor to IEBC, that was IEC then, came forward and also made revelations that there are emissaries sent to him and who are to make him compromise on the choice of who is going to be the commissioner here or there. It is the same thing that has come with the IEBC Commission, such revelations. Does that mean even the entire process of selecting commissioners, at no point will it be we get people who won't work under the compromise of their seniors or appointing authorities? Will it ever get that point?
I think the whole system is messed up. It's a systemic problem.
Failure.
It's a structural problem. It's a political problem. It is just a whole bag of problems. And therefore, what people of this country need to do is to have a national conversation and ask themselves, how do we proceed from here? Elections have been messed from independence up to this time. We've been lucky. This has not brought us down. But for how long shall we continue being? Because we are living on luck. Nothing else. We're just living on luck. And perhaps God coming in for us. But just luck. For how long shall we live on luck? And therefore, we need to create a political framework that can make Kenyans live peacefully with one another, look less suspiciously at each other, increase the levels of trust. Because with the kind of trust deficit we have, not much can happen. But then out of all that, out of that ecosystem, and the political ecosystem that is perhaps captured in a national charter, we could then create another sub-infrastructure ecosystem, an electoral infrastructure. Because now we shall have solved the suspicions, the games, the tribalism, the Ngorokoism. You know, we shall now be talking as children of the same mother and father.
No, those
in that spirit, we can come up with an electoral infrastructure, not body. Body will be a small aspect. We may not even have a body. The whole thinking that will produce something we shall put on the table and say, this is what we shall use to run our elections. An infrastructure. Commissioners and IBC will be a small aspect of that thing. We'll think hard. But finally, we must say that nothing good will come, even if there's goodwill, unless Kenyans train themselves to be serious with what they are doing. This country will go down.
Talking matters, just fixing that trust deficit in our electoral ecosystem, as you've rightfully put out there. Do you think we can probably start that journey by not just looking at the reconstitution of IEBC as we are currently doing through the bipartisan approach? It is more than just going to parliament under the bipartisan approach, but also going there with an open arm to bring credible people on board and not more about high-handedness, who is in power, who is not in power. Does that journey start even from the talks that are to start?
I don't think if we are focusing on IEBC, we can go far. In fact, we shall go nowhere. But it's a good starting point.
Reconstitution.
I have this belief and this thinking that now that we have agreed to talk, these talks will get to a point where they will be big enough to produce a national charter. Because once we become serious as a people, and even these MPs who have been nominated from both sides, they will soon realize that the problems that they must deal with, the problems that this country must deal with, will be beyond them. And therefore we need a broader forum with broader agenda, a broader national conversation, whichever form it will take. But this is not something that can start with those 7 in parliament, even if you get a few people from outside parliament. That cannot. We shall not solve the problems of this country.
A higher thinking needs to come into play.
Pardon?
A higher thinking.
You need higher thinking. You need serious thinking. This is what Kenyans are not good at.
They're not good at.
We are not good at thinking. At all. We never think.
Rightly put, sir.
We never think. We never want to tax our brains. And that's why we'll perhaps just end up destroying our country. We must think. This is the time to think. This country. Look at the cost of living in this country. Look at civil servants not going with
Delayed salaries.
delayed salary. And now here they may be paid in installments.
Yeah.
Chukua hii kidogo, ngoja kidogo. But do you see any serious attempt to think around the problem? Nothing. This is the time to summon the best minds this country has. My history tells me when nations got where we are, heads of the nation ended up bringing the best people on board.
Not business as usual.
The business that we shall collapse. Look, I shudder to imagine what would happen if the prices of essential commodities get out of control. I shudder. Uncontrolled crowds in the cities of Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu,
They may pour into the streets.
looking for bread from whenever they get, from wherever, in whichever way, and from whoever. At the time, even the Luo boys will be looking for bread from anybody who is a Luo, and they will slap them. I shudder to imagine what can imagine if we don't take charge now.
Radical surgeries.
Because a lot of our pain is beyond our borders. So in short, I'm saying, even for this thing you are talking about, IBC and the talks and the politics of this country, what we need today is to summon the best brains we can get
On board them.
on board
Very well.
and think through this problem. If we don't fix our politics in this country, we shall be fixed. And I keep reminding Kenyans, you could destroy a country in 30 days. 30 days.
Just 30 days.
30 days. What happened in Rwanda didn't take a lot of days, by the way.
And a nation goes to its knees.
History has shown us that a week of madness is enough to destroy what an empire had built for centuries.
Insightful.
So if we play around and we destroy this country, you'll get to my age before you fix this problem.
It remains to be seen.
Uganda was referred to as the Pearl of Africa.
Uganda.
Pearl of Africa.
You don't
It was a model country with the Baganda state of civilization, where Ugandan woman even buying a bunch of bananas or two pounds of meat, then which is today a kilo of meat. As soon as she pays for it, she looks behind. What is she trying to get? Pakasi. Pakasi ni mtu wa kubeba. Imagine a kilo of meat or just a bunch of bananas like this. She's looking around for, once she pays, she looks around who carries it. Ustarabu aina hiyo ya Waganda, the Baganda people. And they played around. You know, Amin took over power in 1971 from Milton Obote in a military coup. How many years are those? Were you born then?
Not yet.
These are not 2 years. Are they 2 years?
Over 40.
Uganda is still trying to find its path. One can imagine if Uganda had not gone through those upheavals, where Uganda will be today. One can imagine where it would be today. So we need to think hard.
All right.
And confining ourselves to small things like IBC, small things like how let's work within parliament, will not serve this country. This country will need to sit down and talk. Simple.
Rightly put there. Then again, still on matters revelations that have come on board post the general elections, we've seen Raila's Odinga, chief agent then during the elections, Kanchori, come forth and portray Uhuru's brother, the former president's brother, Mho Kenyatta, as the Tower of Babel, who was in charge of the command center. And shocking enough, he has made revelations of how at some point even Mho Kenyatta intimated to him and asked whether he's sure they will win the presidential elections. Many had high hopes in what was portrayed as the deep state. If someone who was portrayed as the man in charge of the deep state could ask such a question to Kanchori, does that somehow just signal that the deep state is more of a myth and an overstatement in this country?
Those are two questions, even more, but let me look at two. I don't know whether I remember the second one.
I'm here to remind you all those questions.
One is about Kanchori himself, the person, and the other one is about deep state. So let me start with deep state. The assumption is always, from those who don't understand, that deep state is the state, and the state is the president and his people.
The lethal card.
That's not true. It's not true. It could be, it could not be true. This deep state, the concept of this deep state, is a group of people in a country who wield serious influence, informal influence, outside the structures of government.
Not inside.
So, sometimes they may be part of government, so that the president may be part of that deep state. Sometimes the president is an outsider. Most times the president is an outsider. They influence government. They are deep state. What deep state means? They influence the direction government and the state takes. In some countries, they are simply made up of former generals who have been through wars and who know that if you allow things to move in a certain direction, the country can go in the wrong direction, wrong according to them. So they will influence who is elected. Sometimes the business community, the mega players in a country, they fear that if politicians are left on their own to choose whoever they want, perhaps, or to run the country the way they think is best, they could collapse the economy. So there are different interests called deep states who control the system, the state, and sometimes the government. So it is quite possible the deep state could have worked for Raila Odinga and they lost. But it's also quite possible the deep state worked with Ruto and they won. What people forget is that the president could be relying where even if you are to have a cheap understanding of deep state, let's have the Kenyan understanding, the common understanding of deep state. So it will be Uhuru, his ministers, the people in the intelligence,
defense forces,
all these big powerful people in the government. Who tells you they will have worked with Uhuru to the end? Uhuru could be thinking they are working with him, but at some point they desert him and work with Ruto. They cut a deal with Ruto, which in my view is more likely to have happened. That at some point, these players, whatever you want to call them, could have abandoned Uhuru and cut a deal with Ruto. So
under the
that
table.
Deep state thing is answered. First of all, deep state is not always the government, it's not always president. Secondly, even if you are to give it a narrow interpretation of deep state, that is government, the Matiangis and the rest, and
Kibicho and all
the rest.
Jomsheru.
Who tells you they went with Uhuru all the way to the wire? They could have abandoned Uhuru and worked with Ruto. Now to the man called
Kanchori, Saitabao.
Very nice Maasai name.
Yeah.
And this is part of what is wrong with our politicians.
What exactly?
And I will explain right now. I've tried to listen to what the young man is saying. It doesn't make sense. From the time he started and had an interview, I tried to follow.
And now launch a high-selling book.
What is
Saitabao Ole Kanchori.
Ole Kanchori. I tried to follow. There's not much sense in what he's saying. It's so illogical. It's not well connected. First, this game is too big for a young man like that. He can't understand it. And that is now where I am going when I'm saying there's a problem with our politicians. Raila Odinga, Uhuru Kenyatta, William, all these politicians, they have a small problem.
Which is?
The problem is they have a problem identifying men and women they can work with. They go for cheap brokers and conmen around them. People who are good at talking, sweet talking, who are introduced by people, by vested interest.
They were highly recommended.
So that my daughter can bring somebody whom I hardly know and I put him in my system. But you have the chance as an individual, you know this country. You have listened to people. You have interacted with people. You have read people. You've listened to people on TV. You've read people in newspapers. You've heard about people. You've heard people working. You have experiences. You know people. You've been in government. You've worked with some young men, and you have no doubt about their capacity. But we are led by cheap considerations in forming teams. When Raila named that man,
Kanchori.
I said, look at Raila.
And Ruto named Chirchir Davis.
I said, look at Churchill.
Versus.
This time it wasn't Churchill. Churchill was the other time. Eh?
Yeah.
Look at Churchill. Look at a man like that. Look at how serious Ruto is. He knows that is not a position you can give to a boy like Kanchori. Raila gave Kanchori. I looked and said, this is Raila man. And Raila has that history. Even if you look at the people they nominate to parliament, they just nominate jokers. They are used to working with jokers.
How comes he's this blind?
Look at Keneja Kakimba.
Chepkeres, now crossing over.
People who have benefited from Raila, there would be nothing without Raila. But does it mean Raila did not have the capacity to see that these are useless boys? You can help them, but don't count on them. So you see what I'm trying to say is, leadership requires seriousness at all levels. So it's not enough that you are a big man up there. The people you also select to work with you
in strategic positions,
will ensure whether you have an enterprise or not. And when you say small boys and girls, so I'm not surprised that Kanchori is behaving the way he's behaving. Why? How could he have been put that high? And even on the side of UDA, you see some of the people they have nominated in the Senate, some of the shenanigans you saw. But I hope people like Raila are now learning. When I look at the new team they have put in place, headed by Otiende Amolo, in the past they could not have done that. I think now they know.
Now they know.
Now they know. Look at that team. Can you fault it?
You can.
Otiende Amolo, Sifuna, Miliodiam. Just look, Wambua, Kid.
Such strategic positions.
That is how you must be forming teams and selecting people. So now, Ruto is getting very serious fellows to take to bombers, and you take a small fellow like young boys like those young people. They are young. They are our children. We must call them young, and they should be happy to be called young.
In the name of giving them an opportunity. One
day they will get Maega and they will know it was good to be young. So these are young people. They are good people, but you don't elevate them the way you take a man like that and put him. What is his name? Kanchori. Ole what?
Saitabao.
Ole Kanchori. No, he's a good young man, intelligent, capable, can jump up like a Maasai, but cannot rise to the position of chief agent in an election as contentious as the one we had. You get a man like Churchill, and they are there on the Raila side. I looked at bombers the way the boys were running up and down. I said, what is all this now? They needed a sober person from the word go to manage that side of Azimio, the side of Azimio. And therefore, when you take young people like this, and that's why Raila has been let down by people
closest to him.
It's good to be a generous old man. It's good to bring up young people, but put them where they belong. Put them where?
They belong.
Don't elevate them to positions so that when they go with your secrets. Just look at the people who have left Raila to go in bed with the other people. There's a pattern. You see, there's a pattern. But I understand also Raila has a problem.
Which is? The
problem of balancing. So you could have a very capable Luo, but in the interest of balancing, now you leave Otiende Amolo there and you go for some
Saitabao.
But be that as it may, I advise politicians in this country to study people carefully and to look for seriousness in a person before you put them in a position that requires seriousness. Because I'm telling you, there are many serious people who have worked with Uhuru, they have worked with Ruto, there are people who have worked with Raila. They have been disappointed, they have been frustrated, they have been betrayed, they have been thrown under the bus. But because of the trust bestowed upon them earlier on, because of their privileged closeness to Raila or Uhuru or Ruto, then you can never hear them talk. They can't talk. The best example is somebody like Njonjo. He never talked. Whatever he had gone through, people asked him to write a book, he said no.
No.
So, a serious person, even if along the line, green pastures call, and he has to leave you, they leave you with respect and honor.
Like Lee Njiru did for Moi.
Yeah. And when they go the other side, they are careful with what they say. It's like a woman. That's why I'm advising Raila to be careful with these small boys you keep throwing here and down here,
Sure.
and people without serious capacity. A woman having related with a man, however weak the man was, however useless they was, even after you have
Close of
disengaged,
business. Yeah.
at close of business, you have parted your ways, she will never mention your weakness. It's an unwritten rule that every serious woman keeps. They just keep it.
The word is any serious woman.
Yeah. So now if you go beyond the range of serious women and you marry just about anything, they will go and announce what you have and what you can't do to the public. So these politicians must know, look for a woman who, when you part, they will not go talking about your
It's not just about the obsession of having new energy, young tax on board.
Yeah.
It is young,
It's
capable
not just
tax.
young tax, because there are many young people who are serious.
Itumbi, Dennis.
No, those are the jokers. Look for serious young men. They are there. But we have the tendency to go by those who bring themselves. The conmen, the brokers, the sweet talkers.
Power brokers.
They are the ones Raila akifungua nyumba wako nje. Akiingia capital wako hapo.
Na samaki ya mama.
Yeah, those people are there, you know, na mambo ya samaki ya mama wacha. They are poor fellows, most of them. But they are very, they have talent. They are talented. And then being brought, people being brought. Unaona huyu sasa. Either by your family, your friends. You have to be very careful with how you select people. Chief agent in a campaign is a very serious person. Chief agent is a very serious person. Is a person, even when you throw them under the bus, they will die with the secrets they knew. Head of campaign.
Secretariat.
They may resign, and it has happened even in other countries. Head of campaign. They resign because they are not agreeing with the way the campaign is going. But they keep quiet. They don't go telling the other side your secrets.
Launching a book, a high-selling book.
Yeah, so, or some cheap book. You think a book is just scribbling things and throwing. How many people have scribbled books? Migunas, G.O.
Peeling back the mask.
I mean, the book industry, I know. You think you'll peel back the mask and get millions.
And get Raila down.
Nothing. And again, getting Raila down is not a small matter. You must ask yourself.
You're just writing
You
a
think
book.
you can just do small little things, jump here and there,
And write
and get Raila down? You think Raila is a man you just get down? Before you begin scribbling useless things down at a book about Raila. Peeling the masks, what here, elections. No. So finally, we must stop by saying, end by saying, my advice to leaders, be careful who you bring close to you. Loyalty is good, but it's not enough. Intelligence is good, but it's not enough. Trust is good, but it's not enough. It's a combination of all these things. So the process of choosing a person who heads your campaign, of choosing a person who becomes a high-ranking person in the campaign like chief agent, cannot be based on just one factor: youth, minority, Maasai, or the ability to jump up. It must be based on much more than that.
Much more than that.
Yes.
There you have it from Herman Manyora, of course, nuggets of wisdom to our politicians and all those looking for elective seats on how best they can manage their campaigns and also what happens to them after they've clinched those seats or even lost those seats. We've been talking matters post-election revelations that have been coming on board very recently and what that would inform the political landscape currently in this country. So do stay tuned to our other editions that will be coming up at least twice weekly of Siasa Brigade and also Business Glide and also our live editions every Monday, Wednesday and Friday. We can't wait to have you on board. As always, it's always a pleasure to have you on board. Until next time, God bless.